Hey everybody, we're going live with Jennifer. Pleased to meet you. And we're gonna discuss her success story on a carnivore diet with healing binge eating disorder and also psoriasis, really severe psoriasis, and actually severe binge eating. So I'm glad everybody could join us. Let me see. I'm delighted to meet you. Hi, Holly, Ribeyes, Butter and Glitter. We're gonna have our interview soon. Okay, let me see. If I need to send an invite, give me 1 second. Delighted to meet you. Okay.
Yeah, I keep forgetting. Okay, disconnect my VPN, and now we should be able to go live. Okay, should work now. Hey,
Hi.
hello, Jennifer.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Awesome. Let me put the volume up. Okay, that's better. So, hey everybody, we already have a lot of people with us, and so I feel like this is a very interesting topic to so many, especially the day after Christmas. We're going to be talking about binge eating, we're going to be talking about psoriasis, the severity is like at the maximum for both. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this, Jennifer. And first of all, happy holidays to everybody. And hopefully this is going to be fun, educational, and just we're trying to help as many people as we can. So Jennifer, let's go ahead and just share a little bit of your background with everybody, and how you eventually came to the realization that it's the diet, and it's not any diet, but it's the carnivore diet that finally did it for you.
Yeah, so I've had psoriasis since I was 7. Mind you, I was eating the worst kind of diet you could eat as a kid. I mean, all processed food. It was the 80s. It was really bad. And so there's no wonder why I ended up with psoriasis in my mind. But in my mid to late 20s, it got pretty bad. And then like early to mid 30s, really bad enough that I went on an immunosuppressant for it. And
Okay.
immediately after going on an immunosuppressant, I started having a lot of health issues, starting with chronic strep throats, and then that turned into a bout of really bad vasculitis. And then a few months after that,
Vasculitis.
yeah, I had leukocytoclastic vasculitis, which was a lot of the pictures you've seen on my Instagram are vasculitis. Well, that finally kind of went away. And then a few months later, I had the worst psoriasis I've ever had, still on an immunosuppressant even. And so during that time when my psoriasis was getting really bad, it's like I couldn't eat anything. Well, in my mind, I couldn't eat anything, or my skin would just be burning and itching and so bad. And I was just going to my primary doctor, my dermatologist, all these doctors, just desperate, and nobody could really help. And finally I just didn't eat for like 3 days at a time, and my skin finally felt better. I mean, it didn't look better, but it felt better. And so when I told them that, hey, I haven't eaten in 3 days, they started to take me a little bit more seriously of, okay, maybe this really is something to do with your diet. Though they didn't offer much help.
Yeah.
But at that point I went to a naturopath, and his nutritionist is who told me about the carnivore diet. And that felt like a good fit. And once I started eating only meat and eggs and not much dairy, but a little, I was able to eat and have some relief. And still I was on an immunosuppressant, but my skin finally started to get better. And 4 months ago, I was able to wean off the immunosuppressant, which is like a dream come true for me after a lifetime of this. All the while, I'd also been binging all my life. I had no idea that this diet would have any effect on that. This is the only time ever I've not binged, and it's been now almost a year binge-free, as like the best side effect ever.
I know the struggle. You have posts on your feed that really go into detail as to how severe the binge eating was. And I think a lot of people can identify with you. And that's because so many people have those same behaviors. I know I've done that. And we're so embarrassed to share just how much food we can eat, especially very sweet, carb-rich foods. And so, like, most people, like their public kind of facade, you would never know what they're struggling with, you know, until somebody chooses to share that side of their life. So thank you for sharing that, and I highly urge everybody to go check your Instagram profile and read in the, it's like in the top few posts where you go into exactly how many donuts you would have in one day, plus like the Dairy Queen stuff, and all in one day, you know. And I know that struggle. So addiction is very, very real. It's embarrassing, humiliating, and it robs you of everything else in life, literally. So I am so happy that you found the carnivore diet. I am a little bit intrigued by that doctor who actually, who's you know, the assistant you said, or the nurse, told you about the carnivore diet, because it's very, very rare. That happened like 1 year ago.
So when I very first learned about it was about 2 years ago, actually. So I'd say I had a little bit of a false start with carnivore. I dove in head first from this place of desperation with my skin. And then as my skin was getting better, I started allowing myself some other indulgences, and that actually turned into kind of binging again. And so I completely stopped carnivore. And then February of 2022 is when I was like, what am I doing? When I was carnivore, that was when I felt the very best. And I want to get off the medication, and I'm still having a little bit of breakthrough with my skin conditions because I'm not eating well. And so that's when I kind of changed my mind frame from, I want to do carnivore for a little while and see what I can add back to, I actually just want to be a carnivore. I'm not going to cheat. That's over for me. And changing my mind to that really changed everything and made it natural, not a struggle at all.
And would you say that the binge eating, like how would you describe your experience with binge eating before versus after carnivore in detail?
Sure. So before I was a carnivore, I was always this mixture of like confident that this thing I'm trying now is the new thing that's going to keep me from binging. 50% that and 50% there's nothing I can do. I'm just always going to be a binge eater. My brain is just broken. This is just how I am. It's like this weird fluctuation between those two things. But I would start out every morning like, today's the day. I'm going to eat well. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to have this perfect body that I want, blah, blah, blah. And maybe I would make it through breakfast. And then at lunch, somebody would have brought in cookies to work. And I would say, well, I've been really good for 3 days, so I'm going to just have one cookie. And I'd have one cookie, and it's like immediately I'm on some kind of crazy drug. I would sneak back into the cafeteria over maybe a little after lunch, and I would just sneak like 6 cookies in a napkin, and then I'd go eat them in the bathroom as quickly as I could, and I'd go see a patient because I work in a hospital. And then I would sneak out to the vending machine and get some M&Ms or whatever. And then maybe I'd make it through the rest of my workday with just that. But then on the way home, I would just be so excited to stop at a couple fast food places, maybe a grocery store, head of the pastry aisle. I mean, I would spend $30, $40 on junk food, and I would go home and I would so excitedly start eating it. But pretty quickly, 10 minutes into that, you feel like the worst. You feel physically sick. You feel so ashamed of yourself. But you also feel like, well, this is what I've done all evening, so I'm definitely not going to do anything productive. I'm not going to see anybody for sure. And also, like, I feel like I need to punish myself a little. I need to finish this food that I spent all this money on because tomorrow I need to start again. Yeah. And so it was this like depths of despair. It was crazy. Just even thinking about it now, I haven't felt that in so long, but it still feels really intense just talking about it. And so once I became a carnivore and stuck with it, I don't even have those urges for the first cookie anymore. So when I don't have an urge to start a binge, you just don't have that cascade anymore. So it's such a free feeling now. I mean, I can be around cookies and I can be around ice cream, and none of that is even a trigger. Now, I don't know, to be honest, if I took a bite, I don't know what would happen, but I just won't. And now I can avoid it.
Fantastic. And I think the thing that we don't realize is the loss of productivity when all you're thinking about is like once you start, once you have that taste in your mouth, all you're thinking about what else are you going to eat today and how are you going to handle that? It's just always thinking about food and what food options you're going to have. And all of that is taking away time and effort that you could instead be investing in so many other areas of your life.
Yeah, it really affected my relationships, you know, with my friends, with my boyfriends at the time, with my patients at work. I mean, I was so distractible and I didn't want to be around any of those people because I wanted to be alone where I could binge in secret.
Yeah. How often would you say you binged?
Gosh, I mean, I started binging around age 15 and I did it for over 20 years. So on average, probably once a week, because sometimes I could go like a month without binging,
Mhm.
and others would be every day for 3 or 4 days. So
Right.
that's just kind of my best guess on an average.
How did that affect your weight?
Well, I would always gain and lose 30-ish pounds like every few months.
Yeah.
So I'd lose 20, 30 pounds, feel really, really good.
Yeah.
And then it would last one day, maybe. I mean, I can't tell you how many vacations I went on where the clothes I brought didn't fit me by the end of the vacation. So somehow though when I was really strategic and could avoid binging, I would lose weight so quickly that it felt like it kind of stayed pretty stable and pretty even. When I share photos now of me at my heaviest during bad binges, my friends are like, I don't even remember that, because they kind of remember me somewhere in the middle, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, and as Serena is telling us, Carnivore, we're gonna be interviewing also really soon. So she says, honestly, I think it's worse than drugs or alcohol because it's more accessible and more acceptable 100%, and it's pushed at you at every turn, anywhere you go. And during the holidays, good luck.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree. And the other thing I'd add to that is I talked to doctors about it multiple times, and I felt like they didn't really take me seriously. I think if I said I'm addicted to cocaine, they would take me seriously. But they looked at me and I was a reasonably normal size. So I think they just were like, okay, you know, like they didn't
They
really help at all.
No, they don't acknowledge it as a valid form of addiction. Um, Even though we have studies, at least in rodents, that show that it's far more addictive than cocaine. It's the sweet taste, like even artificial sweeteners. So I'm assuming you don't do artificial sweeteners now.
I don't. No artificial sweeteners, definitely no fruit, no honey,
Yeah,
nothing sweet.
yeah, me too. So we talked about the binge eating. Let's talk now about the skin issues. And actually, before we talk about the skin issues, because we're not going to forget that, are there any other things also that you have struggled with that carnivore has helped with?
Gosh, I mean, so many. I had really bad acne most of my life, cystic acne. And honestly, I don't even know the diagnosis, but like other places of my body as well, like my underarms and
Mm,
more like boils on my body. It's like really gross, but I definitely had that a lot. Um, and gosh, I had, well, like I said, chronic sore throat issues even before I went on an immunosuppressant, but it got way worse then. Um, I had, you know, seasonal allergies. That seems to be a whole lot better. I mean, getting really personal, I had super low libido.
mm,
That's
mm.
true. Um, those are kind of the main top five, I guess you would say.
Um, how about mental health, like depression, anxiety, brain fog, or anything like that? Have you ever struggled in those areas?
You know, I would say I would have said no before, but just because things are so much better now, as far as just a more continuous feeling of contentment, I maybe didn't have that before. I wouldn't say I was depressed or anxious to the point that I needed medication, but I have noticed some improvement there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's inevitable, right? When you're doing so much better and you're not preoccupied by an addiction. Alrighty, so let's talk now about your journey with skin. We touched a little bit upon it earlier, but let's go a little bit into it with more detail.
Sure. Well, shall we talk about all millions of medications that I was taking?
Let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, since I was and I was diagnosed, I mean, I remember my mom would have to slather me all the time in tar-based ointments and creams and stuff like that. And I started tanning at a very young age because the dermatologist said that would help. And so around 5th grade, I was going to a tanning bed. And it did help, but as I got older, it just wasn't enough. And I think I probably was eating worse as I got older because I was binging. I wasn't binging as a 10-year-old. And so then in my early 30s was when I went on my first oral pill, and it did clear up my skin completely. That was the first time I'd ever had clear skin, because I'd always had, I don't know, like 100 spots interspersed around my body, and always bad on my arms and elbows. In fact, in high school PE, or maybe middle school, I remember wearing pantyhose under my gym shorts because I was so embarrassed. My legs looked so bad. It's humiliating. But yeah, so oral pill in the early 30s, that cleared up my skin for about 3 months, and then it completely came back. But that's when I'd had a little taste of what it was like to have clear skin. So I was willing to try some immunosuppressant injections that my dermatologist had suggested. And so that's when I went on the injection. Again, completely clear skin. I thought, this is a miracle. And within 1 month, I had the worst sore throat I've ever had. I went to the doctor. They said it was just viral, nothing going on. But I had that sore throat for 6 months. And then 6 months later, I got tested again, and I had a severe strep throat. I went on multiple different antibiotics because nothing would clear up the strep. And during this time of being treated with all these antibiotics is when I started by having a bloody nose, couple bloody noses in a day. And then I started having what looked like little petechiae, like little blood spots on my ankles. And so my ENT was really concerned about the bloody nose and the petechiae, and thought I may have something going on. So I had to go to the ED and get all these tests. They thought I might have a tick-borne illness. They thought, honestly, I had Rocky Mountain spotted fever, so they started treating me for that. Well, within 5 days, my whole body was covered. And I thought, I am allergic to these antibiotics, and if I take one more dose, I'm gonna die. I was so sure. I wrote up an email to my mom with all my passwords and all my financial stuff because I thought I was gonna die. This is so silly now, and I'm sure for a listener it seems a little over the top, but I was convinced. So I went to the emergency department at the hospital I worked at, where they had to take me seriously because I work here. And, they ended up doing a skin biopsy, and it turned out it was vasculitis, but I had to stay in the hospital for 3 days because the strep was so bad. I had to go on IV ertapenem for 3 days to clear it up. I mean, it was so bad. So all the while, I'm still on an immunosuppressant injection for my psoriasis. It was an interleukin 17 inhibitor. Sorry for all the medical details here, but for people that actually have psoriasis, they may appreciate this. And so a few months later, the vasculitis had slowly cleared up over time with just a million creams. But it would flare up especially if I had sugar and alcohol. So, sometimes people say, well, if you just gave up processed foods, your skin would probably be fine. You don't need to be a carnivore. But I could not give up those things until I was a carnivore because I couldn't stop binging. And I actually think the vegetables played a role too, but I cannot prove that. So anyway, fast forward 6 months later or so, worst psoriasis ever, like I mentioned, still on the immunosuppressant. And then when I started carnivore that first time, my skin got a lot better. And also I was still on the immunosuppressant. So I imagine that was helping. And so I was scared to go off of it because I didn't want to start this whole thing again. It had been such a traumatic experience. And so, it's been hard. I still feel a little anxious about it. Like, I've been off of it now for over 3 months, which means that it's all out of my system. And every little itch, I'm like, do I have a spot? I don't. But I'm still there. I'm still kind of working through this a little bit.
Of course, you really want this to be it. You don't want this to be like something that's going to work for a short while and then, because it's like it's giving you flashbacks of that bunch of traumatic experiences that you've been through. I get it. It's so tough with modern medicine being so completely out of touch with studying like the root causes of all of these ailments, which form probably like 99% of the things we're dealing with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And modern medicine is great at preventing you from dying or like saving your life if you've had an accident, but compared to the amount of things that as a group we're dealing with, the vast majority of things we're dealing with on a daily basis is not something that you need to go to the ER for, right? And you know, it's and that's why people love tuning into those conversations, because your case is not going to be taught in med school, right? They're not going to be telling med schools right now, med students about the carnivore diet and look at this case and look at that case. All these people that have cleared psoriasis, that's not going to happen until, I don't know, decades. Decades is probably being a little bit optimistic, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I want to add one thing, if you don't mind. So a lot of people with psoriasis reach out to me on Instagram because they've seen my story, and 2 people have told me that their doctor recommended a carnivore diet. So I feel like we're kind of starting to get there. So that's great. And I fully intend to have a heart-to-heart with my dermatologist once I've been off of this for maybe 6 months, to say, hey, I haven't mentioned this yet, but this is what I've been doing. Maybe just keep that in the back of your mind for future patients, and he'll do that. He'll do with that what he would like. But I feel like it is my duty to share that.
yeah, of course, of course. And what you're doing with your social media is so helpful. And I feel like we're being shared and reposted so much, despite the censorship, you know. But you know, we're trying, we're trying. So let's talk about your lion diet, because I know recently you wanted to switch over to a lion diet, which is removing the eggs, the pork, you know, the cheeses completely, and try to see if that's even better. So can you share a little bit about that, why you chose to do that, and how are you doing right now, all this stuff?
Yeah, I'd love to. So when I was still on an immunosuppressant, I could get away with dairy just fine. And a lot of people would question me about that. Like, really? I feel like dairy really inflames autoimmune conditions. And I'm like, not me, I'm fine. But as soon as I went off that immunosuppressant, I started to notice just some general sort of skin discomfort and itchiness, especially when I'd have a lot of dairy, specifically heavy cream, in my coffee. So it just became very clear to me that if I want, if I want to do everything I can to keep my skin clear and make this carnivore diet work for me, because I think this is truly the answer, then I want to make sure I'm doing everything exactly right. And if that means I can't have dairy, then I need to figure that out for sure. Because if I'm like, maybe I can do it, maybe I can't, I will eat it.
Yeah, exactly. You need the answer.
Yes, I need a solid answer, and then I can do it. And I'm not sure about some other things like chicken and pork. I don't know that there's much of a problem there, and eggs too, but I want to know for sure. So for at least 30 days, I'll do ruminant meats only plus water and salt, and then I'll start adding things back in one at a time and see what I can tolerate and what I can't. But honestly, with dairy, if I'm really being upfront with myself, I think I'm pretty addicted to it anyway. So just the way I had to give up sugar and sweet taste, I really probably need to give up dairy.
Yeah.
But I do want to know if I can tolerate butter. So I definitely want to add that back, because to me that's more of a fat, but I want to be sure about that. But yeah, just in the last couple of days is when I realized I'm using dairy as a crutch, and really coffee too. It's just an addiction. And one of the problems I've had with the Lion diet is that I left it a little open for the next week or so, because I have a couple big things coming up with holidays and work stuff where people are bringing food specifically for me to eat as a carnivore that I know is not going to be Lion diet friendly, but I don't want to, discourage them. They went out of their way to do this for me. So I have been like, okay, I'll eat a little cheese here and there. And then that turns into, well, I already had cheese, so I'm going to go get a Starbucks with heavy cream in it, and just, not binging, but making choices in the same way that I used to as a binge eater. So it's been a little bit harder because I've allowed myself to be too open with it, I think. And this is this sounds like a really bad excuse, but I have one more thing next Wednesday that's going to involve these people bringing me carnivore foods that include cheese and stuff. So I am going to, that day, I'm going to partake. But after that, so I guess the 29th or something, I'll, for at least 30 days, be hardcore lion, no
Right.
cheats at all, and then
And,
start adding some back.
and all the stuff at the hospital is because you're gonna focus more on your social media, right? From what I remember from your post.
Exactly. So I'm going part-time, and that's going to be mostly weekends. So most of the staff that, knows me as like a leader in the department feels like I'm leaving, basically. To them, I'm quitting. I'm not quitting, but it's going to feel like that. So there's a big kind of, this is supposed to be a secret, but I know about it. There's a big kind of going away lunch that's happening. And so, I definitely don't want them to spend hours and hours preparing for this. And then I'm like, I just don't eat cheese anymore.
Right. I get it. No, that's, yeah, I understand. And it's like, you know what, this has been working for the most part. And yeah, it's great that you're making this decision to do the lion diet for at least 30 days, but it can wait a couple of weeks. It's not the end of the world, you know?
Yes, and I think it's been helpful. This struggle leading up to it has been helpful for me to see how much I'm struggling and how I actually am looking forward to a little bit more constraint to feel better about it. And whenever I go with several days just purely lion, I feel so good.
Right.
So it's much like how I went carnivore before and then failed. And then I learned so much from that it made me more successful when I actually tried again. I think I almost have to be hurt to really succeed at something. I have to be hurt first.
Right. I feel like that's the biggest teacher for humans. Unfortunately, pain is far more effective at teaching us lessons than pleasure, So that's great. What is it? So are you a nurse?
I'm a physical therapist in a hospital.
Oh, okay. So that's very similar to my field. When I did my PhD, it was in exercise physiology, but we would take a lot of same courses with like the physical therapy students. So that's very cool. So you're going to be there so you're going to be there only Saturdays and Sundays?
Yes, and a little bit during the week, but not much.
Not much. Okay. And what are you planning to do for the lion diet? Are you going to plan just ribeyes or ground beef? Or
I'm going to eat any beef and lamb and maybe even some goat. So ground beef, steaks, lamb chops, ground lamb. I don't know. I have not talked to Michaela Peterson about this, but I feel like that would even include bone broth and stuff as long as it's made from those animals. So, and I have a bunch of beef jerky. I eat a lot of that. Kind of like the ground beef bars with just ground beef and added fat, not just animal fat. So I'm trying to do lion diet, but also kind of a higher fat version because I'm still hanging on to that high fat thing from the immunosuppressant or from the immune system background, I guess. According to Dr. Boz, if you're in ketosis, it's supportive to your immune system. So I'm still kind of hanging on to that for a little while longer.
So here's what I can tell you about me. I guess I'll do like 70% fat, and I am in ketosis at like almost all day. So sometimes we feel like we might need to go like really, really high fat, but if we're not testing, I think it's a good idea to just test and see, because you might be in ketosis even if you don't have to like force yourself to go even higher fat. You know what I mean?
Yes. So I do test, and I can get away with about 70% as well. Anything less than that, and I'm in a lower level of ketosis. And I'm not even sure that I need to be in ketosis all the time, but just in case, it's like I want to do that for now. But my other big goal for 2023 is more focusing on fitness. And so I understand I may have to adjust those macros a little bit then once I'm kind of in the clear with my skin.
Yeah. I feel once you do the lion diet I think dairy is the biggest thing that stops people from dropping weight very quickly on a carnivore diet. That's it, because it's so easy to eat something that can be addictive. It literally activates the opioid receptors in our brain. So casein turns to casomorphin, which is similar to heroin and morphine, and it activates our opioid receptors. And so we eat and eat and eat, all the cheese and the butter. One stick of butter is 800 calories.
Yeah.
That's it. That's your caloric deficit for the day. It's gone.
Yeah.
So I think doing the lion diet is one of the quickest, easiest ways. I know my friend, I don't know if Stefan, I'm sure Stefan wouldn't mind. Stefan Hartman, if you're here, hello. He wouldn't mind me sharing this, but he did a 7-day lion diet for a photo shoot and dropped literally 7 pounds in 7 days. And he's already very lean, you know, like people are already very lean, like it's the rate of weight loss slows down a little bit. So I mean, of course, some of it is inflammation that you lose, but I'm sure a good chunk is also body fat. So yeah, that's definitely going to help you a lot. And then I think exercise is something that not, not a lot of people tell the benefits of in the carnivore diet, because in the carnivore community, it's such a great tool and it's just so powerful for so many things that the exercise is no longer as a priority the way it is on any other diet. It's almost impossible to drop weight on any other diet because you're still somehow addicted to certain artificial sweeteners, protein bars, things like that. So you have to work harder with the exercise. But I feel like the pendulum has swung too much to the side of you don't need to work out. And it's like, no, you do. Not only for dropping weight, but just for overall health, you know?
Sure, I completely agree. And I try to promote this as much as I can. And I'll tell you what, those posts about exercise get the least engagement on my page of anything. But it's like I'm willing to die on that hill.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw some of you doing abs. I saw it this morning. I was checking it out. That was super cool. Yeah, we do need to move. We need to, you know, run, walk, get our steps in. And I mean, at the very least, get your steps in, but I think it's even more important that we set a structured exercise program with progressive overload. So if you started jogging, the goal should always be to be able to run and then run faster and faster, you know, and then you add also strength training because those are two super important things. You can't just do cardio and not also lift weights. And you need to be able to go to the gym every time, be able to lift heavier and heavier. Like that should be the goal. Otherwise, you're staying put, you know? And if you're staying put with your fitness level, you're still aging over time. And so the rate of aging now is going to exceed the rate of you getting stronger. And that's not what we want. We want the reverse to happen. Yeah.
You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, that's right. So what else? Let's see. So we talked about everything that you've struggled with, and I am so happy that it came from your doctor, because I feel like maybe if it didn't come from your doctor, it would have been difficult for a lot of people to find this way of eating. Not everybody is like a Googler, you know?
Sure, I never would have heard of this. So it was actually the nutritionist in my naturopath's office. And honestly, I think I just caught her at the right time because she had learned about the carnivore diet and was kind of trialing it herself. And so she told me about it. You know, if I had been there 1 week earlier or 1 week later, I don't know if she would have mentioned it. But I live in a kind of a hippie-ish town, it's Lawrence, Kansas is where I live. There's a college here, and it's just weird here. Kind of like Austin is weird in Texas. Lawrence is a little weird in Kansas. So
Right.
if I was going to hear about the diet anywhere, it would be here. But once she told me about it, I just went and looked on social media and Google and stuff, and I found Kelly Hogan and Michaela Peterson, and just really resonated with those two so much that it felt like this is probably exactly what I need, even though it's crazy. Look at them, you know, especially Michaela, her rheumatoid arthritis and stuff. It's basically the same thing I have going on, just a different expression of an autoimmune issue.
Yeah. How are your family members, your friends? How did they take that message? How is it with people around you?
You know, with my family, they are all so very unhealthy. You know, it's the household I grew up in, and they still eat that way. So to them, no matter what I'm doing, I'm always the healthy. So they, you know, they're fine with it. They think it's crazy and they would never do it, but they don't think it's unhealthy, just like they didn't think it was unhealthy when I was plant-based. They think it's all just healthy choices. Jen is healthy. My friends, you know, they saw me at my worst with my skin. So they tease me a little about it, but they are so very supportive. Again, they don't want to do it, but well, actually a couple have kind of made some changes based on what they're seeing with me, not going carnivore, but just maybe increasing meat in their diet or something like that. And like I said, you know, they're going to be throwing me a party of all meat next week. So they're so very supportive. The one person that was a struggle was my boyfriend at the time when I first went carnivore. Because, you know, he was used to his girlfriend eating all the junk and drinking alcohol with him. And then also dealing with my skin. You know, it was like, that was not, he was not prepared for any of that. And then suddenly I'm sitting next to him eating a rare steak, and you know, he just couldn't handle it. It was really difficult. And, you know, we're not dating anymore. That's not exactly why, but I suppose that's probably part of the reason. And so, and now everyone I've dated since, you know, I've kind of led with that. So they know that from the beginning. And so it really hasn't been an issue.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard when somebody quits an addiction and the other person isn't ready to do that, because now the fact that you're no longer addicted to food literally just puts the highlight on him and his addiction and the fact that he's not willing to quit that. And I know, I get it, it's hard. It is. If you don't have a strong reason, like for you, that's a very huge reason, dealing with your skin every single day. That's a big reason. The binge eating, that's a big reason. I feel, do you think that the skin issue is a bigger reason than the binge eating, I feel? Hey, Courtney.
Yes, it was a bigger reason. Oh, hi, Courtney. The skin was definitely a bigger reason, and it was absolutely the reason I started. I had no idea it would even help with the binging, so that was never a reason.
Yeah.
But now, gosh, I'd almost say now the thing that would keep me from eating a bite of ice cream is the binging, because I'm pretty sure it would create, if not some actual binging, it would create so many urges I don't want to deal with. Probably one bite of ice cream would not make my skin flare up. So the skin was the gateway, but the binging is the thing that kind of keeps me on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, it's funny that I see this a lot, that it's rarely the binge eating or the sugar addiction that pushes people to the lion diet or the carnivore diet. And I feel that's because on some level, we're still not 100% convinced that sugar is that addictive. But once we embrace the carnivore, the lion diet, and we feel free and we're like, yes, this is amazing, it's very easy for us to look at our addicted past and be like, wow, I was so addicted back then. And like, then you really believe it later. But it's very rare for people to do that just driven by the binge eating or being overweight, because I feel a lot of people, when they grow up with binge eating, like as a teenager, if you're growing up being a binge eater and maybe a little bit overweight, it's like it becomes part of your identity, as opposed to when something happens like later on, it's like from day to day, it's a new thing you have to deal with. You're like, no, I don't want to get used to this new standard. Whereas the other thing is like you gotten used to that standard. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. It's like, you know, putting the frog in the cool water and making it boil slowly versus dumping it right in the boiling water. No, I completely agree. And had my skin not gotten so bad, I probably also wouldn't have gone down this road, because I was used to living with it for 25 years, 30 years. And it wasn't good. I didn't like it. I was constantly covering myself, and it was embarrassing, but it wasn't so life altering that I couldn't even wear clothes without being in pain, or couldn't sleep at night because I couldn't stop scratching. You know, it wasn't that bad. When it got that bad, it was like, I will do anything. And so that's how I got here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I hope that your message inspires people and eventually inspires your family members, although I know it's almost always when their health breaks down that it has to come from within. It's very difficult for us to just convince people by just telling them stop eating everything.
Yeah.
And it only be like it's a shock, you know. It is a huge shock to everybody. So I get it. Do you feel like there is an important element that we missed or we didn't talk about?
You know, I feel like those are the main things. You know, just like you've talked a lot about being accepted by friends and family and stuff. And I would just suggest, if this is something that you feel in your bones would be good, just do it. And you don't have to talk about it at first. I mean, with your immediate family that's there in your house, they're going to know. But with everyone else, you don't even have to talk about it. And then once you're feeling good and you're prepared and you're ready, then talk about it all you want. Because once you have results, people can't really argue with those results. But at the very beginning, it's really hard to hear, you're going to have a heart attack. What about your cholesterol? You know, it's hard to hear that at first until you're convinced yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jennifer. This has been so great, you know, just connecting with you. This is the first time. And thank you all for tuning in. I am going to save it and I'm going to post this on my YouTube channel. So for people on YouTube, if they want to connect with you, where are the places that they can find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. They're all Delighted to Meet You, MEAT.
Fantastic. I will also make sure that I link them in the description box below. Other than that, thank you so much, Jennifer. I hope we do more lives in the future, and I hope that the Lion Diet works even better. So I'll make sure I keep an eye out for all of the updates. And yeah, that's it. Happy holidays, everyone. Happy holidays again, Jennifer. Thank you all. If you like this video, YouTubers, make sure you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that little notification bell icon so YouTube alerts you every time I post a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.